Hi guys! I never actually intended to participate in a week in the life this year, mainly for the reason that life is a bit sort of meh at the moment, and I just couldn't gather any sort of enthusiasm for a huge project documenting a pretty sort of very boring life at the moment. So that's why you haven't seen anything up until this point, because I wasn't actually planning on doing it. And then I saw a post on Instagram from Andrea at RetroHipMama, sort of outlining her plans for Week in the Life and how she was simplifying it for herself, and it kind of clicked that this project can be like whatever you want to make it. It just needs to be something that works for your life. And I'd kind of forgotten about that, and it reinvigorated my enthusiasm for the project. So I am going to do Week in the Life 2020, and I'm going to start next week. I always do this project a different week from everybody else, the third week in May usually, because it's my birthday week, and I always like to kind of document that. So that's my plan. I didn't miss out. I'm not too late. I just decided to start a little bit later than everybody else. Now my plan for this is to keep everything as simple as possible, so I am going to show you what I plan to be using, but the format that I'm going to document this week in is I'm going to make a little mini book, and this is my finished mini book here, and it's super simple. I've used a whole bunch. I'm going to show you everything I've used anyway, but I'm going to use a whole bunch of life crafted page protectors, and I've just bound them into a little mini book. Because when I use an actual life crafted album, I don't generally use a lot of the page protectors, and the albums do come with page protectors. I just put my layouts as full sheets in the albums, so I've got oodles of page protectors lying about. This seemed like a really easy way to do that. So I grabbed a couple of gold book rings. These are ones I've had in my stash for a long time off Amazon, and I've made a little notebook, a little mini book. So I'm going to show you all the things that I want to use, and then I'm going to show you how I put this mini book together. So if you saw my Project Life video this week, you will have seen this kit. Basically last weekend I had put together a sort of scrapbooking kit, and then for my Project Life this week, if you haven't seen that, I'll link it up here. I just added a few journaling cards to this kit, and did the week spread. And I've been using it for a few other bits and pieces, a few different videos over on my Patreon channel, and I had a few bits and pieces left. So when I decided to do Week in the Life, I figured why not just use the kit I've already made. It's already out on my desk, it's already ready to go. My whole point with this process is I want it to be as simple as possible, so I didn't want to have to go looking through my stash for anything else. I didn't want to buy a kit, apart from the fact that I have no idea how long it would actually take to get to me at the moment. So I just wanted to use what I have. So I used kind of the leftover pieces of the kit that I had, and I kind of supplemented it a little bit. I've added a few extra pattern papers. I kind of based it off the, I did buy a couple of digital stamps from Ellie Edwards. I'll leave the links to anything I can down below in the description box, but basically I sort of stuck with those kind of jewel toned colours that she was using. I went through my stash, I pulled out a few more pattern papers that kind of matched it, and this is basically what I'm working with. I'm not going to restrict myself to this kit. If I want to go into my stash to get other stamps or other embellishments, I totally am going to do that. But this just gives me something to start off with. And I mean, realistically, I probably don't need to go into my stash, but I might. And so that's what I started with. Then the next thing I did was create a few digital elements. So these are just some 3x4 journaling cards. I liked the gratitude cards that were in the actual Ellie Edwards kits. I liked the idea of having that sort of one prompt to tell a story each day. I figured it would be easy to do. I used the gratitude digital stamp, was one of the stamps that I used, and then I used the Mogan font just to add the days in here. And I've kind of tried to tie the colours towards the papers in the kits that I've already used, plus some of the digitals that I've printed. So as far as the digitals that I've printed, I went to the In a Creative Bubble shop and bought 3 different sets of these Traveler's Notebook pages. And that's, I figured, the easiest way to do it. I printed out some of the ones that I really loved. I've got far too many. I'm definitely not going to use all of these, but I did print out the ones that I thought would suit this project, but that I also may well use at another point anyway. So I've printed those out just to keep everything a little bit thinner. I didn't print it on card, I've just printed it on, it's about 120 GSM paper. These 2 are Citrus Twist ones. I also had some of those, so I printed those out as well. And then I printed just a few more kind of journaly black and white ones. I don't necessarily want to have full color all the time because I want my photos to be able to stand out a little bit. So I won't go through all of them. There are 3 different sets that I used, and so I will link those down below as well. And that's basically what I'm working with. Then what I went and did was grabbed another set of the Ellie Edwards digital stamps, and I created some dividers for myself for my little Life Crafted mini book here. These are just a file that I created myself. These are obviously cut from acetate, so incredibly difficult for you to see here. But there are 7 tabbed dividers, 1 for each day of the week. Like I said, I cut that on my silhouette using a file. I just created that file myself, so I will leave a link to the freebie cut file down below for you if you want to do the same thing for yourself for this project or any other one. These are 7 tabbed dividers. And like I said, I used a digital stamp set from Ellie Edwards to create these gold vinyl days of the week, which I then adhered to the front of each of my dividers here. So like I said, very hard for you to see, but I have one for each day of the week. I love the gold. It's gonna match the rings that I'm hopefully gonna put this album together with. And so I will just separate each day with those. It just gives me something a little bit transparent, a little bit sparkly, a little bit fun to go with my really basic supplies. So it was really easy to create the covers for this mini book. I just grabbed a sheet of cardboard here, and I think I originally had this card for letterpress, so it's really a really thick white card, which I love. It's going to make this process really easy. My other option was a bit of chipboard, but because this is lovely and white, I'm only going to end up having to cover one side of it with pattern paper. I'm happy to leave the white cardstock showing on the inside. And otherwise, if I used chipboard, I would have just used a second sheet of pattern paper and covered both sides. Now I'm going to use some liquid adhesive for this, just because this sort of letterpress cardstock, the fibers are quite loose, and I didn't trust tape of any sort to stay secure enough for this. So I'm going to use some liquid adhesive. I just added a tiny bead around the outside and then a little bit through the middle of the card as well. And I'm going to lay that flat down onto this really gorgeous piece of blue floral crepe paper, pattern paper that has been in my stash for a really long time. Too pretty to use, I guess, is my excuse for keeping it, but I finally found a project that this is, you know, feels special enough to use, and it's time to stop hoarding these sorts of things. So I'm going to use that, and I'm doing the same thing with the second piece of card. So this gives me my front and back cover. And I'm just going to make sure that that's pressed down nice and firmly and then let the glue dry a little bit. Obviously, I'm too impatient to let it dry completely, but I'm going to let that dry just a little bit and then trim around all four sides using a metal ruler and a craft knife. I could have put that through my paper trimmer, but I just wanted to make sure I was getting nice and close to that cardstock just to be a little bit more accurate there. So just trim out the four sides, and then all I need to do is punch the 6 holes that are going to match my Life Crafted page protectors. And really the easiest way to do that is to grab a page protector, line it up with the side of the cover, and then I'm just using a single hole punch through those 6 holes on the page protector, and that way I can be assured that they are going to be in perfect alignment for my little mini book. And then I'm just going to repeat that process exactly the same way with the second cover, which gives me my front and backs. So like I said, I had these gold book rings that I had got from Amazon a really long time ago and have never used. So I'm going to use those because they're pretty. But you could use really any book rings that you wanted to. The other thing is you don't necessarily have to have 6 of them. If you punch 2 holes, one top and one bottom, still lined up to your page protectors, then you only need the 2. It's still going to hold everything together, but you don't necessarily have to add in the 6 book rings for this particular kind of project. I've added in all of those page protectors. I just put them in there for now just to see how thick this book's going to get. I think it should be fine. But I decided I really wanted to protect this cover a little bit just because it is a pattern paper that I do really love. But it is paper, and this book is going to get used a lot, hopefully, in the next week. So just to give it a little bit of protection, I'm going to add a sheet of acetate. This is just the same acetate that I made my dividers with. And I'm going to add one front and back. It's just going to give me that tiny bit of protection. It's not going to get knocked around too much or ripped or scuffed or anything like that. So all I've done is, you can see there, just trim it out to make sure it's the exact same size as my covers. The covers I've just made so they're the same width as my dividers so that the little tabs aren't going to end up sticking outside of the covers. They'll be nice and protected as well. And so I'm doing the same thing, trimmed that out and then punching those 6 holes, and then I can just add a sheet of acetate front and back just to make sure that this book stays nice and protected. As much as I love this plain like this, I did want to add a little something to the front. So what I've gone and done is cut a few more of these digital stamps. These are the ones I grabbed from the Ellie Edwards store, and I've just cut them on white vinyl this time. So I just brought them into my Silhouette studio and trimmed them on white vinyl. I didn't really know which one I wanted to use for the cover, so I did a few of them, and I'm sure I'll use them throughout the album anyway. But I decided to go for this through the lens one, even though it doesn't say anything about sort of week in the life, because fortuitously, this very old set of chipboard stickers from Citrus Twist, one of those says a week in my life, and so I thought I would add that to the cover along with this digital sticker. And that would just be enough of a kind of title page for this mini album. So really easy to add that. I put it straight onto the acetate so that I can layer a little bit of pattern paper behind it, just because that the pattern, the blue floral pattern, does have those white pieces in it, so it makes it a tiny bit harder for the title, that sticker, to show through. So I'm going to punch out the reverse side of it. I just made a little circle. I liked the idea of it being a circle. We're talking about through the lens, so the circle seemed appropriate. And I'm just going to layer that onto the pattern paper behind the acetate. So some of this little cluster is going to be on the front, some of it's going to be behind, and I love the way that that works. Now my sticker was just a tiny bit too large to fit in between the letters of the digital stamp, so I'm just trimming off the sides a little bit, and so then it fits perfectly, and I can add that in. I just want to add that in first, and then I can work out where I need to adhere this pattern paper circle to. So this one is just paper onto paper, so I have no problem just using a tape runner for this. I'm just adding a bit of adhesive and then putting the acetate back and just working out exactly where it needs to go before I stick it down.
which was easy enough. And then just to add a little bit of extra colour, I am going to add a piece of washi tape. This sort of gives me that really pretty jewel-toned pink. And I'm going to just trim that off and call that my cover.
So that's my plan. That's what I'm going to attempt to do. This is going to be a really simple sort of documenting exercise. I don't intend to take thousands of photos each day. I've got not a lot to take 1,000 photos of each day, so I'm just gonna not plan too much. I'm gonna see how it goes. I'm gonna work on this each day because the one thing I do have at the moment is plenty of time, and I'll just see how it goes. So let's cross our fingers that in a couple of weeks I've got something finished to show you. I'd love to know what your plans are, whether you participated in Week in the Life this week, last week, if you're going to, if you're planning to. If you're not, that's totally cool too. Thanks for watching, and I will see you again really soon. Bye!